Welcome to the Your Leadership Legacy podcast. My name is Tina Paulus Kraus, and I'm so excited to bring you this next podcast dedicated to you high performers out there who want to reinvent yourself, reinvent your business, maybe your career, all of it. This podcast is all about being dedicated to transformation and being the best possible leader of yourself and others that you can be in order to create a legacy that lives on. Welcome to Your Leadership Legacy. My name is Tina Paulus Kraus. I am the founder and CEO of True You Teams. And here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Your Leadership Legacy. My name is Tina Paulus Kraus, and I am so excited today because we have Amy from the Doyenne Group with us today. And I am just so excited because I have watched Amy and her leadership over the course of the last couple of years. And I absolutely love, Amy, what you're doing in the community and just what you're all about. So if you could introduce yourself to everybody and just give us a little bit about your background, that would be amazing.
Okay, great. I'm glad to be here. My name is Amy Gannon. I'm a co-founder of Doyenne, which is an organization committed to building communities where women entrepreneurs from all backgrounds can thrive. And so we look at what are the puzzle pieces in a city that would make that statement true. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done because most cities aren't like that, but we've worked for the last 7 years in Madison doing that, and we'll be doing it in Milwaukee and expanding nationally over the next few years. So
That's
we're
amazing.
about that. Just a little bit about, okay, so that's what I do now. How did I get here? What has the crazy journey been like? And many of you might have seen that picture where there's a straight line and then there's the curvy line. I'm in the curvy line category, which is what I think is mostly true for most people. I grew up in Ohio, a small town. I was first generation college. I went to American Union. I knew I didn't really know what I was doing when I went to college. I just didn't really have any help, not by any fault of my parents or other family members, but it was just the nature of it. So I wanted to go to a city and I wanted to study international relations. So I went to Washington, D.C., American University, and I did a double major in my undergrad of international studies and econ. I thought I was going to do Peace Corps or World Bank or something international, but life never sort of plays out the way you think it's going to. So my boyfriend at the time, and he's my husband now, so he was a keeper. Yeah, they're not always keepers, but this one was. We moved to Atlanta right after I graduated. And he had initially had a job offer there and it fell through, but we decided to move there anyway. And so I started doing a few things, and then I did a lot of women's advocacy work there. So I worked in a rape crisis center in a large urban public hospital, and they hired me in my early 20s, saying, we do stuff about sexual assault, but we don't do anything about domestic violence. So can you figure that out? Here's your 4 pencils. Here's your desk. Here's your computer. And I'll date myself, that has no internet. It's basically word processing. Can you figure it out? The computer you share with 4 other people. So within a year, I had developed a team of people, made contacts within the hospital, outside of the hospital, and was really training all hospital staff, including physicians, writing policy, how to handle when somebody comes into our institution who we think is experiencing domestic violence, and how do we handle that. So I did that for a while, and then I moved to the state Division of Public Health in Georgia, at the time, a lot of funding was coming from the federal government to support violence prevention. So rape crisis centers, the state was getting money to disperse to rape crisis centers to do prevention work. And they hired me to figure out what that was, because they had never had dollars for prevention versus crisis intervention. So they said, can you figure that out for our 18 rape crisis centers? This time I had my own computer. I didn't have to share one, but essentially I had to create out of scratch. How do we have all these amazing women who have spent 20 years who founded a rape crisis center, spent 20 years working with police officers and judges and physicians to be able to think about how do we do prevention work and work with school teachers and principals and after school programs. And it was a huge shift. So I spent some time doing that. Started to get a little burnt out. It's heavy to have that conversation about violence against women day in and day out. Mm-hmm. And I knew I wanted to go to graduate school, and my husband and I had decided we're living in Atlanta, but we don't necessarily would choose to be here anymore, even though it was great while we were there. So we pulled out the map and said, okay, we should know one person and one of us should have a job. So we ended up in Boston. So in Boston, I got a job working in an HR at a high-tech company. This is part of that.
They're round and about.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was doing college recruiting and some HR strategy and some leadership development there. And I got really frustrated because diversity and inclusion didn't make it to the strategic HR plan. So I started a women's network on my own. And fairly quickly, I thought I should tell my boss because I'm kind of doing this a little rogue. But so he's not taken by surprise, because if somebody says to him, do you know Amy's doing this? It might cause a problem. So I told him. He proceeded to tell the CEO. The next thing I know, I'm engaging with the CEO around equity issues for women in the company. And during that time, I got my MBA from Boston College. I was lucky enough to get it paid for. I was still paying student loans for my undergrad, and I was like, I don't need any more student loans. So if this company's going to pay for it, I'm going to get through my MBA as fast as possible. So I did that in 3 years, worked full time, and then took a class in my MBA program that I loved called organizational behavior, which is really a combination of sociology and psychology. And why do people do what they do at work, which, big surprise, is the same reasons they do what they do at home, and they do what they do at church, and they do what they do in their, community life. So
that's the truth,
isn't it? I mean, it's not. And so I got a PhD in that topic, decided to go on for further graduate school. And then I found myself in Madison because I needed to get a teaching job. So I moved here. I never heard of Edgewood College, but spent some time at Edgewood, both as a faculty member, as an associate dean, and as the interim dean of the School of Business there, and really renovated the whole undergrad curriculum. And at that same time was building my startup nonprofit. So about 2 years ago, I made the transition out of the academic environment to full-time into my startup nonprofit. So that's the squiggly line.
Yeah. So what was I love how you've trailblazed your whole career. Like, as you were kind of going through all that, you've been a leader. Like, you've left that leadership legacy everywhere that you've been, whether it's been from starting programs or opening up a conversation or whatever it is. So you went into, what made you finally decide, oh, I need to start this organization? Like, what was the catalyst that made that happen?
Well, when I was in my doctoral program, all of my research is on entrepreneurs, and my dissertation research was I did case studies of 15 African-American entrepreneurs. And so I was doing really what I would consider kind of intimate interviews about their life journeys and what they were doing. And I remember coming home one day and saying to my husband, I have a vivid memory, I really want to help these entrepreneurs, because they were finding it very cathartic and very, for whatever reason, I was able to create a safe space. And entrepreneurs don't have a lot of safe spaces because they have to have game face on all the time, right? I don't want anybody to know I don't know what the hell I'm doing, right? So, right. And I remember thinking, but I don't know how I would do it because they're all broke. So, like, they're in their early stages when they're having so many challenges, they don't have the funding to support necessarily. So what does that look like? And I just let that percolate. And so I came to Madison, and I started going to entrepreneurial events, and I helped to organize a few things. And there were just not women showing up, right? And I was getting more and more agitated. So one of my co-organizers introduced me to his wife. who apparently was complaining about the same things I was complaining about.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I met my co-founder. And so we said, somebody's got to do something. We're very action oriented, the two of us. And so we said, there are things out there, but they're clearly not enough. And so let's just, instead of complain about it, fix it. And it was fixing it for us, but it was really fixing it for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we just decided we just were tired of complaining about it, and we would just do something.
Right. So when you mentioned that women weren't showing up, why do you think women aren't showing up or weren't showing up at that time? And how has that changed since you have kind of built what you've built?
Yeah, I think, when you go to, it's sort of a downward spiral, because you go to events, and I think it's generally true, but I think it was dramatically true in the entrepreneurial space. Anything that was labeled entrepreneurship was typically organized by white men for white men, is really how it was built. All the speakers were white men, and often white men who are either investor dudes or 20-somethings that, in their skinny jeans and a hoodie, who coded something in their dorm room. And when women go to those male-dominated events, the energy they have to expend, the hurdles that are in front of them, the work they have to do to be seen as legitimate, is way more work than the men who walk in the room, right? So they already know it's going to be a lot of work. They're not going to see people on the stage being recognized who look like them. Mm-hmm. And then they're not going to quite get the rewards, because they're not going to make the connections in the way that men make the connections around mentorship or coaching or sponsorship. So at events that are predominantly men, women work harder for fewer rewards. And so at some point we say, it's just not worth it, right? I just can't, there's only so much energy I have, and I'm going to put it into doing the work. Mm-hmm. And so they don't come. And so when Heather and I founded Doyenne, there were two things that we thought we could definitely solve. Because when you found a business, you don't always know what it is. People ask me, do you tell people when they have a bad idea? Because I coach entrepreneurs. And I said, I don't actually, because I don't see ideas as static. I see them as dynamic and evolving. Right. So how do we know what it is yet? It's going to evolve into into what it's meant to be. So when we founded Doyenne, we said, okay, we are going to create activities where women can go and they can be guaranteed that the room will be, if not all women, predominantly women. We can make that happen. And two, we will eliminate the excuse of, we didn't have any women on our panel or any women speakers because we didn't know where they were. We couldn't find them. So we said, we will find them. And now in Madison, there's zero excuse. Like, if there are not women included, all they had to do was send an email. And I'll give you just tell me what kind of entrepreneur, and I'll give you 10. I'll give you a list of 10 you can choose from. And what's nice about the community is that now, if you look, compared to when we founded in 2012, there are women leading almost all of our co-working spaces. We have 6 or 7 are led by women. Starting Block, our entrepreneurial hub, is led by a woman. Our Small Business Development Center, led by a woman. The Latino Chamber, the Black Chamber, led by women. There are just women in key roles. And the community is saying, when they see an all-white male panel, something's wrong. So, and we have about 230 members, and that's 230 women that are mobilized to be voices in this community. So it's the conversation is happening around inclusion in ways that I know it's not happening in other cities. The leadership is the whole entrepreneurial community being driven by women. Our festival, when we started, the festival was 10% women. We have a week-long entrepreneurship festival. Last year, 70% of the organizers were women. 50%, more than 50% of the presenters were women, and nearly 50% of the attendees were women. So it's a complete transformation.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's amazing to it's been amazing to watch that happen in the community, right?
Yeah.
So when we talk about the name of this series is Your Leadership Legacy, and the inspiration behind it came from in today's world, crazy busy, we're highly connected, there's constant change, we have information coming at us all over the place. And so if we're not taking care of ourselves, it's really hard to take care of others. And so when we talk about leaving a leadership legacy, from what you've seen with your organization and kind of your experiences, what does that mean to you?
So for me, so my life mission, I have a life mission. My purpose is more power for women in positions of power, period. So I know that's, and I didn't always know that, but I discovered that's the reason I'm here. And so when I think about that's the role I play, I think about where that really means for me. If I've been a part of growing more women leaders, that's the legacy, right? The legacy is really, how do I create the space and the support and the tools for women who are incredible to rise to who they are meant to be. And I really think the only thing that's going to save our planet right now is women sharing that leadership power with men and a more equal share of that. So legacy for me is impact through people. So I always think that if I grow a woman entrepreneur, if I help her, she'll help at least two more, and those two will help two more. And so this thread of what it means to lead and grow leaders will just continue forward in that sense. And that's how culture change happens. So I think of legacy as all the lives that I'm able to impact in such a way that they will impact others.
Yeah, I love that. And even just in some of the stuff that you were explaining, just in how we're starting to see women pop up in these positions and they're out and about and they're, on panels and all that kind of stuff, like that's the legacy, right? Like that's the legacy and what it means. What is the biggest thing that you see that holds women entrepreneurs back?
I think entrepreneurship can be a very isolating experience. So, and I think it's particularly true, can be for women and people of color. And so when the world always, women are bombarded with messages of you're not good enough and know your place. Subtle messages, overt messages. Every time we step into the space and we've crossed some kind of perceived boundary, we get our hand slapped and we're put back in our place in all kinds of ways. And I would like for listeners to think about every time you doubted yourself and somebody responded, were they trying to put you in your place? And we don't need to be put in our place. And so when we have community around us, and instead of walking away from that and backing away from that, we engage in a community of women who say, yeah, we're not going for that one. And we have women saying, well, why not you? And we have people around us who will say, this is how we could do it. Let's brainstorm some action plans. So we combine confidence with competence. Mm-hmm. But in the entrepreneurial space that is already isolating, and then you show up at these events, you tend to internalize that the problem is me. I'm just not a good entrepreneur, when this is just a chaotic actual exercise. So anybody, I swear a little too much, so I'm going to do it. I know every entrepreneur, there's a shit show going on behind the scenes. I know it. Anybody who tells you differently is blowing smoke. So don't listen to it. So I think when women they become guarded and they don't find their community and they don't find those voices around them who are going to help them build the skills they need and build the confidence they need. I think that's the thing that gets in the biggest way. And so we create a lot of avenues that tackle both the confidence and the competence piece of that.
Yeah.
And women don't really need anything. They just need to be unleashed. That, like, they have it all. I'm not implanting things in them. I'm just sort of where are the barriers and removing those so that women cannot be held back by others or by their own internalized.
Right. Sometimes it's just like giving the permission, right? Like it's this weird thing, but sometimes just somebody saying, hey, it's okay, go. It's as little as that. And I love the whole concept about you're not alone. How many times do we feel alone, right? And so we're not alone. So my next question is about leadership and how leadership has evolved. Because I believe that leadership is different today and moving into tomorrow than maybe it has in the past. So I'd just like to get your take on how leadership has evolved and why we need different skill sets kind of moving into our future.
Yeah. So one of the things I think about when I think about what leadership is going to look like, in some way it relates to that unleashing. I think we've tilted way too far to what we would traditionally call a masculine command leadership, and at the expense of a collaborative leadership and a shared leadership model. And I think that's when you look at some of the problems we have in the world today, it's because it's too tilted in that way. So I think there are a lot of ways to lead. It's about, and a lot of leadership behaviors, but it's about deploying them at the right time and for the right team, what the team needs. And so when I was in graduate school, I remember something that resonated with me was an article that called it was leadership as meaning making.
As what?
Meaning making. So leaders, when I think about leadership and my leadership and my experience evolving as a leader, I think what I do is I create meaning. I make sense of the things that are happening in a way that we can collectively then move forward, individually and collectively. So on a one-on-one basis, when I'm with an entrepreneur, I listen a lot, right? And then I can frame in a new way of seeing all the stuff that's going on cognitively, emotionally, physically with them. Well, let's reframe that and have meaning in that will allow us to move forward in different ways. And collectively listening to the collective, whether it's a team or it's a community, and figuring out, what am I hearing that's the collective wisdom here? And can I articulate that collective wisdom and then share the power, right? I think leadership is power with, not really power over. And what is that? That looks very different than I'm the boss, you do as I say. It's I'm the leader, what do we need to accomplish, and how do I create the space for everyone to lead when it's their time.
Yeah, I love that. I love power with, not power over. I think that those few words totally explain the evolution of where we've gone, right? Because in our past, it's been very much about individual accountability. And in today's environment, it's about team and collective, which is exactly what you were saying. So I love that.
And things are more fluid. So like in our organization, we say, we don't take a hierarchical approach. Like these are the mentors and these are the mentees. We actually say, in this given moment, you are mentoring and you're the mentee, but in about an hour, it might flip, or on another occasion. Sorry, I talk with my hands a lot. That's me. So I think that's also a difference, and it's related to the power with, but it's saying we all bring something. So there's a flow and a fluidness and a dynamic nature to this, rather than a rigid hierarchy, move up the corporate ladder kind of model of who's on top and who's on bottom, but more how are we being fluid in that? And I think even the work culture where you see this gig economy and you see people with technology and things, we're able to craft our work and craft our life in a way that we're not at the mercy of in many ways. And so you see all kinds of crazy things happening and awesome things happening, and things being democratized in ways that I think is the future.
Yeah, it's just kind of changed everything, right? Like our whole landscape and how we work and how we play. And it has changed everything. And so here's my question as we kind of wrap this up, because we're almost out of time already. So people that are listening to this, some might be aspiring leaders, people that want that title, maybe somebody that wants to start a business, maybe somebody that has a team in place right now and they're having trouble moving that team forward. What's the one piece of advice that you would give somebody listening to this if they're still kind of stuck in that power over and they want to start moving towards this power with, to really start being able to leave the kind of leadership legacy that they want to leave? What's that one piece of advice?
One?
Yeah. You can give more, but
so one of the things that I find, people won't ride with you if they can't trust you. And they can't trust you if they don't know you. So being authentic, and I'm cautious about using that word, and I'll explain, but having self-awareness to understand we're all beautifully imperfect. We entered the planet this way, we will leave the planet this way, so we need to get over this. I have to have it right, I have to know everything, I have to be perfect. That's not the goal, and it's just simply not possible, so it's a waste of time.
Right.
So it's really about owning your superpowers, owning and deploying them well and when they go sideways, but really knowing who you are and being fully you, which gives permission for other people to be fully them. Yeah. And when we are all at the table in all our glorious, chaotic imperfection, conversation self in the work, I think is the most important way to lead. And then I'll give one more other piece of advice that was given to me early in my career. I remember she was the administrative assistant in our rape crisis center, and she knew everything. She was like, I see everything that goes on, and she was so wise. Like she was a gift in my life. She came to me one day and she said, Amy, you got to own your leadership. I said, what are you talking about? She said, I know you're not the executive director. They go to the executive director to get things signed off. They come to you to solve the problems and figure out what's going on. And you're not taking ownership for that role that you play. Mm-hmm. You're doing it, but you're not owning it. And when you don't own it, you don't serve. And so you can't blindly, you may be leading without responsibility. And I think there are many, many women who are leading, they fly under the radar, and they don't always own it.
Yeah. And
so recognizing your job title isn't what defines you as leader.
So
doesn't
true.
Matter. It's in many ways irrelevant. You have the capacity for influence, and you're likely influencing people. Own it and deploy it in a responsible way. And sometimes that can be exhausting. Mm-hmm. But it's who you are. And so I would encourage women to just own that they lead, even if they don't want to, but please do. We need you to do that. And that was some of the best advice I got, because I was leading, but not taking responsibility for it. And so for the rest of my career, I've repeatedly learned that lesson. Sometimes we have to learn it multiple times. So I've repeatedly learned that lesson. So I encourage others to be your fullest self and recognize and own when you're leading.
Yeah, so many good nuggets there. So many good nuggets. I love that you had somebody that respected you enough and saw in you enough to come to you. So anybody that's listening to this, like we're kind of afraid sometimes to have those conversations, especially with people that we really admire and look up to, and have the conversation, tell people that you see them, because look at what a gift that was for you. So I love that. We are at time. So Amy, I want to thank you. You have given the listeners so many amazing nuggets and tools and tips and stuff like that. So I really, really appreciate that. And I thank you for your time. How can people get a hold of you if they want to reach out to you?
So our website is www.doyennegroup.org. And my email, because you can email me, is amy@thedoyennegroup.com. I know it doesn't match up, but the Doyenne is spelled DOYENNE group.com.
Awesome. Wonderful. I'm sure that people will want to definitely reach out to you. You are a wealth of information and knowledge, and I thank you so much for everything you're doing in the community. You're just an amazing leader, and I honor you. So thank you.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. All right. Yeah, right. So that ends our interview. We have another amazing speaker coming tomorrow. So we'll hope to see you there. Thanks, everyone. Bye now.
My name is Tina Paulus-Krauss, and I thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the show. Check out our programs and events at trueyouteams.com. And until next time, make it an amazing day.